Hi, welcome to a presentation from the Saint Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. You can learn about us at our website at nonnatus.org. Well, I'm very excited because on this broadcast I have a very special guest, as you can see here. I have Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers. He is a Catholic author, speaker, and an EWTN host. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Ann. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now, right before this started, we were talking about the fact that this foundation, our tagline is that freedom, family, and faith. I wondered if you could talk about each of those aspects because there's a lot to talk about there.
Yes. So, well, first of all, talking about freedom, we have to really understand what freedom is and how we approach it, especially from a perspective of faith. So society, when society says freedom, what they mean is I am free to do whatever I want. When actually, that's not freedom, that's license. So for us as people of faith, freedom is rooted in the obedience of faith. It's listening to the voice of God and allowing that voice to change our life. So authentic freedom is when our wills, our wants, and our needs and our hopes and our desires and our dreams are in union with God's will. Our will, God's will are one. That is true freedom. When our will is united with God's will, now we're free to be the person that God created us to be. So, but how do you get there? You get there by virtue. Okay. Now, again, when you say virtue in the culture says, oh, you have to walk around all pious with your hands folded in prayer and halos around your head. You have to be perfect, can't make any mistakes. And that's not virtue at all. Okay. Virtue is the firm disposition to always choose what is good and to have the will and to cooperate for us as Catholics with the grace of the sacraments to always point and direct our lives focused on a deep, intimate personal relationship with God. And virtue helps us to get there. So the way to think about virtue is like a musician, right? So if you want to be, say, I want to be a professional musician. I want to be one of the best. Well, what do you have to do? You have to practice. You have to sacrifice. You have to take music lessons. You have to learn how to read music. You have to master the instrument. And that means you're going to have discipline. That means you have to practice every day. That means sacrifice. That means you have to give up things, even some things that are good. Spending time with your friends, watching television, spending time on social media, and not do those things at all. But you're going to cut down that time because you want to focus on what your goal is to be proficient at this instrument. And so there's some pain because I really want to be at my friends. I really want to do this. Really want to go to this concert. But you're so focused on your goal that you're willingly sacrificing those things because you know that the more you do this, the faster you get to your goal, right? And so eventually when you do become a proficient musician, because you have followed the rules and you followed the rules of music and scale theory and the different modes that you have to you mastered all of that, even though it may not have been enjoyable the entire time. The end result is what? You're not just able to play the instrument, you're able to express yourself through the instrument. Now the instrument, you have people say, well, that instrument just came alive. When you played that, I felt something. That's the goal, right? That's the goal. And you're able to do that because of everything that came before it. It's no different for us as people of faith. So if we want to be truly free, and what's the freedom? What's the goal? To be the person who God created us to be. To be, as Master Kelly says, the best version of ourselves, right? So just like a musician, what do you have to do? You have to sacrifice. That means you can't be or think like society does. Drinking, pornography, drugs, sex before marriage, all the things the culture says you need to do, those actually take away your freedom. Why? You become so used to those things and the pleasure that's associated with them that the pleasure and the pursuit of pleasure takes you away from the pursuit of your ultimate end. You know, it's like you're going down the river of life, and there's a tributary. And you say, "Oh, what's down here?" And you start rowing your boat, this way because you're interested in what's going down there. Here, you lose where you were actually going. And so we sacrifice those things as people of faith. We also have to have discipline. Just like you have a music teacher, the church is our teacher. We have a catechism. We have scripture. We have sacred tradition. We have church. These are the things that we align ourselves with, the rules, just like the rules of learning how to play the scales. That's our scales. That's our teacher. The church teaches us how to be virtuous, and cooperating with the grace of the sacraments, along with the teaching, gives us desire to be virtuous. And what's the ultimate goal? And once we, but it's a lifelong process to master virtue, because we still have concupiscence. We still have the desire to choose that which is not good, and sometimes we do choose it. Thanks be to God for the sacrament of reconciliation.
That's right. Exactly.
So God, Jesus knew we weren't perfect, and so as we're moving toward authentic freedom, we're gonna slip, we're gonna make mistakes, but if we stay focused on that goal, now we're able to fulfill our greatest potential. Now we're able to be instruments in God's hands, because we're just instruments. God's a musician. And we have to be finely tuned instruments in God's hands. And that's what virtue helps us to do. And when we do that, now we're truly free.
Wow. You explained it perfectly, because without virtue, we can't really have freedom when we are following on that path of virtue. So thank you so much.
Well, see, and as you pointed out before with the culture, the license of the culture actually enslaves you. It doesn't free you. Now, the mantra is, I'm free to do whatever I want, but that kind of thinking actually enslaves you, not frees you. Because look how many people caught into drugs, alcohol, sex trafficking, all these things, because now they're so focused on that they've lost where they were going. You see, but the culture wants to say, well, following all those church rules and commandments and moral codes, that turns you into a slave. It's just the opposite.
Right. Yeah, thank you. That was awesome. And then moving on, our second one is family. And I know you have a lot to say about family, and I'm sure that they would love to hear.
Again, in our culture today, we have all kinds of different, the culture has different ways of being family, okay? And so now in fact, they even have categories now, right? They have traditional families and non-traditional families. Now, what that meant, prior to this modern age, was that the traditional family was father, mother, children. But now we have a culture, and non-traditional families where, okay, somebody was divorced, or somebody, one of the parents was died and they remarried, so now there's a blended family, or that kind of thing. But now, family doesn't have to have mothers, you don't have to have fathers, you don't have anything, in fact, you only have to have two people. For example, in Japan, there was a man who spent $14,000 attempting to marry a hologram. There was a woman in my neck of the woods in Seattle who attempted to marry her apartment building. On live television in Europe, a woman attempted to marry her dog. She was in a wedding dress. The dog was in a tux, and she was on live television. And a woman in Missouri, some people might remember, the judge allowed this to marry herself. So now, so-called marriage has become this whole thing. But what are we talking about here? When we're talking about marriage, we're talking about, just objectively, the words themselves comes from matrimony. Matrimony the words literally mean the state or condition of motherhood. So if you want to redefine marriage and redefine family, you have to change what those words actually mean. But who has a right to do that? I mean, who has a right to change what objective reality actually is and what it actually means? But that's exactly what our culture is doing today. And so what happens is you have the understanding of what the family was, not just traditional family, but family, fathers, a man and a woman, a father and a mother, and any children they have together, which serves as the heart, the core, the center, the foundation, the nucleus of civilization and society. And for 6,000 years of recorded history, that relationship, man, woman, children, has always been protected by society because of what that relationship does for everyone else in society, even people who aren't married. Whereas the definition of family today is just two people who love each other, or even a person that loves it, like I explained, an object or something else. So notice that definition: no fathers, no mothers, no children. You know what that means? No future, no society. That's what that means. Again, this whole self-indulgent, it's all about me. I'm worshiping the Trinity of me, myself, and I. And so all my wants and desires are focused on the self. But whereas we talk about family, from a Christian perspective, we're talking about what's best for everyone. Because family's about sacrifice. These other relationships are not about sacrifice at all. It's about what's best for me, what's pleasure for myself, what's in it for me. Whereas families, is the thinking is this, is when you give yourself away in love, is when you truly find yourself in God. That's the idea of family from a Christian perspective. And so everyone has a role: mothers, fathers, children. One's not superior to the other one, but they all serve the common good of bringing of raising the next generation of citizens, right? Of hopefully virtuous citizens that are going to also have that same mentality of life is not about me; it's about making a gift of myself to others, and in that way improving our whole society and our whole culture.
And you can see how what you said about freedom and family, how they're really intertwined.
Yes,
to those
exactly.
two aspects.
Exactly.
And that's why, this foundation was founded in 2015 by the Mercedarian Friars for that reason. And that's why they called it the Saint Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. And that'll be the next one. Mm-hmm. If you could talk to us about that, the aspects of faith and how they intertwine with the family and freedom.
Yeah, so faith is one of the what's called the theological virtues, right? So faith, hope, and love, right? Mm-hmm. And so faith is the belief in God and the belief that God has the truth that God has revealed to us, and the fullness of that revelation is Jesus Christ. Okay, and then also what Jesus Christ teaches about God, and also what the church teaches, because Jesus Christ founded a church. He said it 3 times in Matthew's gospel, and the church that Jesus founded, and believing all that Jesus Christ and the church teaches, right? That's faith. So faith is not in the culture like, I hope we get to our vacation destination on time. I have faith that we'll get there. That's just kind of a surface kind of faith. When we talk about faith, we're talking about a faith that's leading us someplace. Because for us in our existence, our lives are pointing and directing towards somewhere. So for the atheists, at the end of their life, what is it? There's nothing. There's nothing. But for us, we believe that the word's called teleology. So all that means is that God wants to have a relationship with us, and that because he wants that relationship with us, we respond to that relationship, that our lives have a meaning and a purpose and an ultimate end and an ultimate goal, which is union and life with God forever. Because that's where our ultimate, because when we get to heaven, there's no faith, there's no hope, there's only love, right? Yes. And so faith is what we use to get there. Now, we live in a culture where people of faith are mocked and ridiculed. Why? Because there's no tangibility to faith. So they're thinking unless you can see, taste, touch, measure, or quantify something, it's not real. So when you pray, for example, oh, come on, you wasted your time praying? You need to do something. Forget all that praying stuff. Monks and nuns, they waste their time, their whole life in monasteries praying. Come on, they're not being productive citizens of society. In order to be useful, in order to be meaningful, you have to be productive. So again, that's that way of thinking, right? Mm-hmm. The problem with that, I have faith in the government. I have faith in the system. You got to be careful. Actually, what government's supposed to be is an extension of the natural moral laws. It's called positive or human law, where we take that natural moral law, which is that law, which is that part of God's eternal law, which is implanted in the hearts of every single human being, where we do good and avoid evil. Okay, and then so for example, how does that extend into the public policy? Seatbelt law. Mm-hmm. Now I remember when I was a kid, me and my brother and my other brother, we used to tussle around in the back of that station wagon, while Dad's driving, we're wrestling around back there. No seatbelts. There's no seatbelt law. Then all of a sudden the seatbelt law came in. Why? Because it showed that people will survive car accidents if they wear their seat. The greater chance of surviving a car accident if they wear the seatbelt. Now, isn't it better if people actually live in a car accident instead of die? And the government said, you know what, this is so good, we're going to impose it on everyone because the health and safety of our citizenry is something that we value, and something. So we're going to actually mandate for the safety of everyone that everyone has to wear a seatbelt. So that's a very positive extension of the natural moral law into human law.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah, and that's how it's supposed to work. But unfortunately, the more we separated from this objective reality, the objective truth of the moral law, the more we've gotten into. So instead of being made in the image and likeness of God, we're trying to make God in our own image and likeness. And in fact, we've been trying to push God completely out of the picture. Why? Because just like Satan said in Genesis 3, you will be like God. So there is no God. Now I'm God. And that's exactly what we're doing in society. So faith is not pointing us towards something. Faith is just this nebulous thing that, like rubbing a lamp and a genie giving you a wish. I mean, that's what faith is in our culture today.
You did a good job of tying those three aspects of freedom, family, and faith, which is part of our mission. You have some great resources. I wondered if you could talk to them about your books, and maybe we have some pastors or church, people that work in churches who are watching this podcast and thinking, I would like to contact him to come out, because you do have some great
so everything that I do is just on my website, deaconharold.com. You have access to my social media. You can see my calendar. You can book me for speaking engagement for parish missions, or to speak at high schools or retreats or conferences, all kinds of events. So that's the easiest place to go. In fact, even on there, it has a media section. So there's like publications, articles, things you can download for free. There's audio things you can listen to. So there's all kinds of resources there for folks. And there's an online store as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm actually here right now up in Western New York at Our Lady of Mercy for the mission that you're doing here. And I've enjoyed it so much. I know you have a range of talks. Can you tell them maybe some of those different talks that you do?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think my approach when I'm speaking, I'm a generalist. So I don't focus on one thing. Like, Christopher West pretty much does theology of the body. That's his thing. And Jason and Christian Everett will do chastity. Kind of that's their thing. But for me, I didn't necessarily want to focus on one thing. So I have about 20 or 21 different topics that I speak on a regular basis. So everything from I have talks on each of the sacraments. I haven't talked on sacraments in general, but each of the sacraments, on marriage and family. I have talks on male spirituality, or different aspects of male spirituality and fatherhood. I even have a talk for women, the genius of feminine spirituality. I have talks on apologetics. I have talks on atheism, praying with confidence, the pursuit of happiness. There's all kinds of different topics there. Father Augustus Tolton, the slave, became the first African-American priest. On the talk on the Beatitudes, I have talks on pro-life, and just all different types of things. Yeah,
so much. That's awesome. As we're ending this show, I wondered if you had any advice for families or individuals who are in crisis. Part of what we do is outreach to them, and also those who are affected by divorce and separation. I know you shared with me that you yourself are also an adult child of divorce. Mm-hmm. Any words of wisdom for them?
Yeah, so here's the thing. I mean, marriage is hard. Okay, I spent some time discerning a religious vocation with the Benedictines, and I'll tell you, and I've been married now for 26 years, and marriage is the hardest thing I've ever done. Okay, monastery was much easier, but here's the way I describe it. I mean, being a child of divorce, and here's why you have to work really hard to make sure Jesus Christ is the heart and the center of your married life. Young people sometimes ask me at youth conferences, they'll say, well, Deacon, what is it like to be a child of divorce? Because they're not stupid. I mean, they can see something's going on in their family. They're afraid it might end up in divorce, so they ask me what it's like. And I tell them the truth. I say marriage is a beautiful thing. It really is, but it's also the cross. And divorce is when the parents put the cross down and the kids pick it up. and that's a place that you never want to be in your marriage. So yes, marriage is a challenge. And again, sometimes one person's faith grows, and another person's faith doesn't grow as fast, or maybe even goes backward. So you have to watch for those things and really remember that you have the grace that God has given you in the sacraments to be able to get through anything. As Jesus said, and as the angel Gabriel also said to the Blessed Mother, with God, all things are possible. So remember what your priorities are: relationship with God, family, and everything else. Why put God first? If you don't put God first in your own life and in your marriage, you're no good to your spouse. You're no good to your children. You have to put God first. That means you have to pray individually, your own prayer, but also pray together. That is extremely important. Even if it's just a simple Hail Mary together. Our Father, hold hands, close your eyes, and just say something together. To remember that Jesus Christ is the heart and the soul and the center of your married life. And that's what you want to pass on to your kids.
Thank you so much
Yes,
for
thank you,
joining
Ann.
us.
Honored to
Please
be
come
here.
back again if we can do this again. I'd love to.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And remember to check out his website at deaconharold.com. I'm Ann DeSantis for the Saint Raymond Nonnatus Foundation. See you next time.